Welcome to another exciting show with me today. That's me, Vance, and of course, as usual, the coffee is here, but we call it the Kopi in the Singapore style. So I hope everybody there watching right now, so joining us right now, have your cup of coffee ready and join us for this podcast today. So today's podcast is all about sleeping. That's right. We need to sleep, and our guest speaker who's been coming in very shortly to discuss, and we're going to have a great podcast all about sleeping method. But today's main focus will be is insomnia. What is insomnia? Is defined as difficulty falling sleeping, fall asleep. Difficulty staying asleep as well, or waking up early in the morning, not being able to fall back to sleep. It's all about sleep, but people with insomnia sleep less or sleep poorly despite having an adequate chance to sleep. So why is this happening? Right. And of course, obviously, we are all stressed up. Why? After COVID, now is pre-COVID, post-COVID already. So we should not be feeling any more stress, all right? And of course, a lot of impact has been on our mental health. Even just, I think 2 days back, or even just today, our health minister, Ong Khan has said that mental health should be one part of the it must be inside a healthier SG. So much of priority is given into the mental health. Without a further ado, I'm going to invite Dr. S.H. Wong, who is a psychiatrist. Hello, doctor. How are you there?
Hello, good evening,
Hi.
everyone. Hope everyone had a nice dinner. No food coma in the next hour or so.
So
Yeah,
that is a
thanks
point because
for thanks for inviting me to the show. Thanks.
yeah, I try to sleep. But you know what? I caught something in your T-shirt.
Yes, yes, yeah,
Never give up on your
important.
dreams. Sleeping. Oh my God, this is a topic that we are talking about, right?
Yes, yes, very important topic. Yes.
Yes, Doctor, it's a great pleasure to have you, Doctor. I mean, to have you talk a lot of stuff on the sleeping method. And Dr. Aziz Wong is not only a psychiatrist, he's also an aviation medicine physician. Doctor, before we jump into the topics for today, sleep when sleep don't come, you want to do a quick introduction about yourself so that our viewers will know who we are for our guest speaker today.
Sure, sure. Thanks. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. Yeah, I started off training as an aviation medicine physician with the Air Force, and I've actually just retired last year. Recently started out on my own practice, doing what I love most. And of course, when I was in public service, I've been quite actively involved with Singapore General Hospitals, and I have been working with the sleep disorders unit over the past 10 or more odd years. So sleep is my interest, partly because of my work with the Air Force, where sleep is very important, fatigue related issues, where flight safety is concerned. Yeah. So I hope to be able to share some of these uh, things that I learned through the years. Yeah.
Doctor, there was a great introduction about self. But when we talk about sleep, I mean, isn't it
Mm.
sleep is one of the easiest factor, right? I mean, somebody sleeps. You can see people sleeping in the bus, people sleeping in bus stops, and sleep is something that is very common, very something not unusual, very usual for us. But despite having this word insomnia, and what happens when we sleep? Because that is the first thing that I'm going to engage you on this.
Mm,
Is
mm.
sleep very important, doctor?
Oh, it is extremely important. We spend one third of our life sleeping, actually, if you think about it, on average 8 hours out of the 24 hours per day. And I think for the purpose of sleep, okay, it's a complex science, very new. Clinical sleep medicine has been around maybe only since the 1960s. So one of the younger, aspects of medicine that we know about. And from what we know so far, sleep has a very important physiological role in everyone's lives. And if you were to put it simply, it is a way for our body, our brain, our mind to recover from the hard work that we have put in the first 16 hours of the day. Yeah. And if from what we know so far, importantly, when we do sleep, an interesting fact is that actually in the first half of the night when we sleep, right, that's where the body repairs itself.
Right.
Lots of things are going on, hormones are secreted, certain other things are suppressed. That's why, interestingly, if you ask any Chinese ama, uncle, they will tell you, hey, little children, please go to bed early, otherwise you cannot grow tall. And there is some truth to it, because actually a lot of the growth or repair happens in the first half of the night. And in children, especially because growth hormones are typically released in the first half of the night. So if you neglect that part and you miss the window, then you have very kapek children.
Right.
I don't know how much statistic is there to back this up, but yeah, it makes sense, But importantly, in the second half of the night, a lot of people don't realize this, is that that's where the mind actually repairs itself, recover itself. That's where, in fact, the big part, big proportion of dream sleep, or what we call rapid eye movement sleep, REM sleep, is happening. And REM sleep, despite us calling it sleeping, right, but it's actually a very active process. I always use this analogy when I do my teaching or give some public talks. This analogy about dream sleep, because interestingly, a lot of people would complain, oh, doc, I dream a lot. I feel very tired. I feel as though I never sleep. And is it a bad thing? Actually, dreaming is a good thing. So in this analogy, dreaming means that you actually have achieved deep sleep, because REM sleep, we consider it as part of the deeper part of sleep, even though it's an active process. But in my analogy, I use computer hard disk. Those of us who are, studying when we were in the 1980s, 1990s, computers used to have this hard disk that spins, right? And if you are familiar with computers, you will recall in Windows 95, 98, and if you are using such hard disks, right, you realize that after a while, right, your computer runs slower and slower, and sometimes it hangs. And then what do you need to do? You need to go into the menu and do a defragmentation. When this happens, what the hard disk actually do is to reorganize the data that is stored inside, right? To pack it up into a very efficient way of retrieving information. And then all those deleted files are chucked away, right? So similarly, in theory, REM sleep is something like this, where the events of the day, things that you remember, and memory of things throughout the day. And memory does not just include information, it also includes emotional memory, it includes sensory memory, what you smell, how you feel, and so on. And that's the period where the brain sort all these things out. Useful things, they'll then be organized into the long-term memory. All the rubbish, things you don't like, don't wish to remember, you chuck it up, right? So when you have a nice dream, that's where all these things happen. And you realize that sometimes if you do wake up early, right? For example, you're a late sleeper, or you sleep early, but you have to get up early to do something, right? You realize that if you miss the second half of the night, although your body have sufficiently recovered quite a bit, you realize that, why am I thinking a bit slow today? I feel a bit dumber. My IQ points drop 1 or 2, that kind of thing. Yeah, so it's partly because that we have just deprived ourselves of that REM sleep that is doing all this brain recovery or mind recovery, so to speak. Yeah.
Right.
So in short, that's what sleep does. Yeah.
It's a quite an amazing thing what you said. We need to sleep in order for the deleted files. The body get repairs, right? But we live in Asia, especially we Singaporeans. We always want to get the first thing done. When something launch, we will be the first to line up and kind of stuff. So we have this mentality of doing everything fast and quickly, and work longer and work harder. So are
Mm.
we any kind of health issue pertaining in the next decade or even the next few years if we don't have a proper 8 hours to 10 hours of sleep or rest?
Okay, on average, we all sleep, 6 to 9 hours. That's what happens to most people. But what you are talking about is what happens if we get sleep deprivation or chronic sleep restriction. Then obviously, it is going to incur quite a significant amount of impact on the body as well as the mind. So let's talk about the body first. Chronic
Yeah.
sleep deprivation actually has many impact effects on the body. It has been shown in various studies that if you were to, not be getting enough sleep, either through, voluntarily and behaviorally, you've been doing things, bedtime procrastination and so on,
Right.
or if you have insomnia or disrupted sleep for whatever reason, be it from an illness or stress, or maybe you work a lot at night. So all this impact on the body is that you end up with chronic inflammation, right? Chronic inflammation, your hormones, metabolism, and all those goes out of whack. So
Doctor,
if
the
hmm,
cortisol level also goes up when you don't have enough sleep.
uh,
It's,
yeah, that's part of the physiological stress on the
yeah.
body if you are not giving it the opportunity to rest or to recover, right? So good point that you make there, because one of the common sleep disorder in Asians especially, and then in Singapore, it has been found that about 3 in 10 persons have this condition called obstructive sleep apnea.
Apnea,
And
yeah.
yeah, and this causes a lot of sleep disruptions, and it ends up that it triggers a lot of physiological changes in the body, which eventually leads to insomnia. Because we all know that patients with sleep apnea, right? Their typical symptoms will be snoring. I'm waking up, although I slept, but I wake up feeling unrefreshed. I'm sleepy all the time, tired all the time, lack of energy, and that's because of the disruption in the sleep, right? And over time, this disruption causes a lot of stress on the body, which leads to then cortisol, elevated cortisol levels, inflammation, and so on, which then lead on to insomnia. So, starting off with sleep apnea, you can actually end up with chronic insomnia and a
Right.
lot of other complications such as obesity, metabolic syndrome, putting on weight, get higher risk of heart attacks and strokes and so on. Yeah.
So, doctor, this seems like a uninvited guest, but these invited guests are just coming into your life just because we have not solved one issue, but it leads to
Mm.
so many varieties and variations of health conditions to come in. Wow, that's
Yes.
scary.
Yes. And importantly, right, when you start having chronic insomnia, you feel miserable. You can't focus at work. You make
Right.
mistakes.
Right.
You screw up here and there. More stress piles up, and then you become someone who has a higher risk of depression, anxiety, and so on. And so they're all interrelated.
Thank you, doctor, for giving us such an in-depth explanation on that and what happens when we sleep. But before we move on to the next segments of questions to engage Dr. S.H. Wong, but to the viewers right now, if you can just do one favor for all of us, for the both of us, in fact, for every one of us, if you can just press the share button on your Facebook, or if you're watching it from YouTube or even from Spotify, press the share button and send it to many people, to your friends, to your families, as much as possible, because I think this is a topic where we really want to go in depth. And I think with Dr. S.H. Wong's expertise on as being a psychiatrist, as an aviation medicine specialist or physician, we are going to engage him with a lot of questions. So please ask questions if you have, but at the same time, please do share and like as well, because we want to get great awareness to many people as possible. Doctor, as we move on, especially on the elder generations, right? As we turn 30,
Mm,
40, 50s, we tend to lose a bit of
yes.
energy, we tend to hype up, hype down, in fact, and then we get tired. And, if let's say if I want to go function in the evening, probably I have to sleep for 5 or 6 hours before I can attend the evening. So there is this physiological changes that happen to our body and getting tired and easily. But
Mm,
another side of problem is they can't sleep.
mm,
So,
yes.
why
Yeah.
do older adults experience more sleep problems?
Okay. Good question. In fact, if you notice, all our ama, ape, at home, right? If you notice, uh, with age, yeah, once they hit their 60s, 70s, you notice that they always complain that they are waking up too early, they feel tired, they start taking a lot of naps in the day. So part of the reason actually is the natural change in the way we sleep, right? And we know for a fact that with age, sleep tends to be getting shorter, and the amount of deep sleep, right? Deep sleep, including dream sleep, also get less in terms of quantity. Now, one of the reason is because with age, right, melatonin secretion becomes less and less, right? In our brain, we actually have a hormone that's called melatonin, which is meant to coordinate all the functions in the body according to the body clock, circadian rhythm. And this is like they are like a messenger from the brain to tell the rest of the body what to do at the same time to coordinate timings. And melatonin itself is also something that contributes to being able to have more deep sleep or dream sleep, the deeper part of the sleep. But with age, right, this level starts to drop. And at or about 50 odd years old, right, it drops to almost negligible levels. And therefore, that explains why, as we age, right, sleeps also tends to get shorter. It feels lighter. We keep waking up easily. A little bit of noise wakes us up and we get very frustrated. And then we feel tired in the day and we start sleeping in the day, taking naps here and there. Now, the other aspect to age is that with age, other aspects of physiology also changes, especially in ladies, right? And we'll see that many ladies who come to see me, right, for problem of insomnia, very often you'll find that their insomnia problem seems to start round at about the time they are about perimenopausal. So that's where a lot of hormonal fluctuations happen. The estrogen levels drop, and this and that, and that triggers a lot of these sleep issues. So with age, there are changes in the body that we cannot avoid, and we just have to keep our fingers crossed. Hopefully, it doesn't affect us too much. But of course, as far as possible, if we were to maintain good sleep hygiene, good sleep practices, we can possibly mitigate some of these issues. Yeah.
Doctor, let me just share a read up that I did over years ago. So there was this many years back, I think in some countries I don't want to mention, they did a sleep study. They put someone in. I'm sure if you have heard about it, correct me if I get it a mistake there. They put somebody inside the prisoners, and then they locked it up the room, and then they make these people don't fall asleep, all right? They don't make them sleep by putting in certain gases and all that. And eventually
Yes.
they turn into some sort of
Zombie.
animal. Yeah, because they never sleep for so many days.
Uh-huh.
So the real
Yes.
question is, Doc, I mean, if we're just talking about sleep deprivation, right? I mean, if you're not
Mm,
sleeping 8 hours, you're only sleeping 5 hours, 3 hours.
mm,
If it
mm.
accumulates over a period of 1 week or 2 weeks, what will exactly happen, Doc? The body will fail, right? I mean, of course, we don't
Okay.
have
Mm,
blood pressures and all
yeah.
that will go up. Your HbA1c, everything will just go shoots up. But what
Mm,
exactly
mm.
happens if let's say if 1 week I don't have a sleep?
Okay. I don't know about 1 week. I think after 3 days, I'm half dead already.
Agree.
But okay, yeah, but yeah, if we were talking about sleep deprivation, actually, interestingly, coming from my work in the Air Force, because I deal with aircrew pilots, safety is a important thing. work-rest cycle is an important thing. And a lot of my work goes into this area about fatigue. And one of those knowledge I gleaned in my earlier days is that, do you know that after about spending 16 hours awake, beyond which our brain performance, right, coordination, thinking, judgment, and so on, you'll be beyond 16 hours of staying awake, you actually would be performing all these tasks as though you are legally drunk, right? Blood alcohol level is equivalent to 0.08 milligram per liter, deciliter. So you are performing at a legally drunk kind of state, beyond which obviously you know what's going to happen, right? But of course, as mentioned earlier, the functions of sleep. First is the body repair. Second is the mind repair, right? And we know, I cannot remember in details, but we do know that the longer we stay awake, the body starts to undergo a lot of stress, right? Your muscle feel weaker. There's a lot of changes in the metabolism. But interestingly, for the mind, is even more critical, right? Beyond a certain stage, you know the Subaru challenge. Some of them actually, right? Subaru challenge. Some of them actually start to hallucinate, right? So because the brain haven't quite got rid of some of those rubbish that we were talking about, right? And then things get a bit messy. You start to have abnormal experiences, perceptions, and so on. You can't think straight. You get micro sleep. You get hallucination, and some even start to have psychotic symptoms even. Yeah. And of course, there are cases where chronic sleep deprivation. Some things that you can even drop dead from a sudden death because of the various stresses that's going on.
Right.
Thankfully, we don't have a lot of such cases, or at least we don't know about it. Yeah.
Thank you, Doctor. Doctor, at this moment, I'm going to take one question from one of our viewers. So we have Audrey here. So Audrey has asked that, is it common for people to just, they move right while they're sleeping, like falling from the sky, or like without a parachute, you feel that kind of just sudden feeling of failing or falling in their sleep.
Falling is. Yeah. Yes, indeed. Okay, good observation. Actually, this is what she has described is hypnic jerks, right? And typically this happens when we are about to fall asleep, when we are transiting from awake to the lighter stages of sleep. And this is fairly common, right? But there are also jerks that happens during sleep itself. There's a condition which we call periodic limb movement disorders, right? Or the other term is myoclonus, nocturnal myoclonus, where the nervous stimulation triggers muscular activity, and ends up that a patient with this condition will have lots of leg movement. Typically, it's not so drastic as jerks, but they can end up with some unknown injuries. I wake up with bruises and so on. And then, of course, there's another more extreme condition which we call RBD. RBD stands for REM sleep behavior disorder. This is when there's some desync between the stages of sleep, because during dream sleep, the brain paralyzes the body, right? So that we do not end up enacting our dreams. It's a protective mechanism. So the body is paralyzed, we are dreaming, right? And so that we don't end up running around, or hitting things, because we might be dreaming that we are fighting some monster, and we might end up hitting ourselves against the door, the bed frame, or we might end up whacking our bed partners, right? And then get arrested, or doing all other funny things.
Doctor, like what you say, right? Involuntary movements, because when we are sleeping, it is as equal as a coma. It's just that it is like a coma. It's just that we are breathing autonomous, which is a part of the brain is just continually breathing, and gas exchange in the lung capacities and all those stuff. But involuntary movement that day it's sudden, sometimes you feel like you're falling, like you have explained
Yeah.
it so
Yeah.
well. So now we know our
Yeah.
viewers what exactly these symptoms are.
Mm.
For those viewers who are just came in and just hearing our podcast, we are from Kopi with Vans, and today with me is Dr. S.H. Wong. He is also the psychiatrist as well as an aviation medicine physician. We're having a great conversation with him. If you do have a question to engage, please do ask us, and we try to take this question as much as we can. And in the meantime, you're watching this, please do share and like, because very interesting topic. For not first time happening, for the past 3 years, it's happening in Kopi events, all about health talks, topics, and with experts and professors and doctors like SH Wong, right? So I do have more questions that's coming in. Just hang on. I have a few more questions that's coming in, but I'm also going to engage Dr. S.H. Wong on a little bit more on sleeping pills. Doctor, we hear about sleeping pills, sometimes because we're going to go a little bit more on the psychology part, but sometimes stress, anxiety, depression also can cause us a lot of issues as well in insomnia and kind of stuff. In your work, as a psychiatrist, I'm sure you have seen these cases very much more, but insomnia doesn't seem to go away. I'm keep seeing my GP for sleeping pills, and they are always very stingy about it, thinking about it. But no, it's not something that like sweet, it's very dangerous if it's overly consumed. Is it safe to use sleeping pills, doc?
Okay. For sleeping pills, I would say that appropriate use is very useful. Because in insomnia, by and large, I would say most people, or if not all, would have experienced insomnia at some point in your life, right? If you tell me you never had insomnia before, I think you're lying to yourself, right? Now, if by and large, most insomnias, whichever trigger it may be, generally would be short-lived, right? Usually because of certain stressful situation, or work related and so on. And even if you were to do nothing, most of them would resolve on its own. But sometimes it get a little bit tricky, a bit prolonged, and the use of sleeping pills would be actually helpful, because there are a certain category of patients, especially the kanchong type, the anxious, worry all the time, overthink. Generally, they are more vulnerable to moving on to what I would say as a chronic form of insomnia. Why? Because when their acute insomnia is not resolved, right, they start getting anxious about getting insomnia itself, right? And then it becomes a vicious cycle. They worry about getting insomnia. The more they worry, the more they cannot sleep, and then it goes on and on. So in this type of patients, early intervention with appropriate use of sleeping pills is okay, because you break that cycle, and then they can get back on to their normal lives again. But if you end up in a situation with chronic insomnia, then generally the use of sleeping pills on a long-term basis become a little bit more tricky. Why? Because those the legit the typical kind of sleeping pills we're talking about falls under the class of what we call benzodiazepine. So you have drugs like Valium, Ativan, Domicum even, right? And these are potentially very addictive type of substance if you use it on a prolonged basis, especially if you were to use it on a daily basis. So therein lies the risk. So the key thing to addressing whether or not you should be using sleeping pills or not depends on actually what is the underlying cause for you having chronic insomnia, because chronic insomnia can be a result of many issues, right? Stress is only one of them. There could be underlying psychiatric disorder that is developing or evolving. You could have underlying medical problems. For example, sleep apnea is one of them. Or you can have other medical conditions or their treatment that may be contributing to insomnia. So take, for example, someone who is asthmatic. Very common. As in asthma, you're going to have a lot of breathing difficulties, discomfort, distress. Your body is under stress, difficult to sleep. Worse, when you start treating the asthma, commonly with steroids, use of steroids. You use those inhalers, and inhalers contains usually what we call sympathomimetics, right? It's a stimulating kind of medication that can cause insomnia itself. So there are a lot of conditions that can give rise to insomnia. Other common causes could be pain symptoms from rheumatism. You have some injury, or certain other conditions that causes a lot of chronic pain that can also affect the sleep. So important thing is you want to address what is the underlying condition, because if you treat the root cause, then insomnia will improve. But if you keep treating the insomnia without addressing the root cause, then you end up creating potentially a new problem. Now you become dependent or addicted to hypnotics. Yeah, so that's one of the risks. So it's important that if you have chronic insomnia, you should get it evaluated as soon as possible, so that you reduce this risk of exposing yourself to another problem. Yeah.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you for that. And we're going to take one question from one of the viewers here, Adeline Ho. She stated that if you say it is a good to dream, but why do I feel more tired after a sleep with many dreams? She feels exhausted after lots of dreams.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Unfortunately, I can't put up any diagrams here, but this has got to do with the sleep architecture. When we say sleep architecture, when we go into cycles of sleep, generally we go into the stage 1, stage 2, which is a lighter sleep, and then we go into the deeper sleep, which is stage 3 or dream sleep. Now, interestingly, the dream sleep part, the rapid eye movement sleep, happens at the transition between deep sleep and awake state. That's why you notice, and then earlier on I mentioned that dream sleep, the bulk of it happens in the later half of the night, usually closer to morning. And hence, very often you realize that, you wake up from a dream, it's morning already. Okay? And this transition period is important if you have frequent or a lot of dreams. And most often than not, most people will feel okay, right? Some may not even remember the contents of the dream. They may remember dreaming, but they may not remember what goes on in the dream. So the critical part is whether these dreams are causing awakenings. So if these dreams throughout the night, if it happens frequently and causing awakenings, then obviously you get sleep fragmentation. And it's a bit more troublesome if you have problem getting back to sleep again. Most of us should not have this problem. You drift in and out of your dreams, and usually that's not the issue. Worst case is that if you have a lot of nightmares, and that can be very distressing, causes a lot of arousal, and that can also affect how you feel the next day. Then, next question to ask, why are you having so much dreams? Right? Generally, when someone have too much dreams, we start to think about whether there's a underlying problem. Very often, stress can cause that. In fact, sleep deprivation can cause what we call a REM rebound. That means you have a rebound of the amount of sleep dreams that you have, right? Or if you have underlying psychiatric conditions such as depression or anxiety, that can also give rise to a lot of these dreams that causing a lot of distress. Yeah.
Thank you, Doctor. I'm back again. So, yeah, Doctor, I mean, you are from a Stardust Sleep Center, and I also just looking at it at the moment right now. You actually do provide a lot of multidisciplinary sleep clinic specializing in insomnia, snoring, sleep apnea, sleep disorder as well. I mean, of course, you're also providing clinical services that is also adult general psychiatric consult, stress-related mood anxiety disorders, and adjunct treatment for irritable bowel and syndrome and chronic pain. Doctor, I mean, when we say the word psychiatric, people get scared.
Yeah.
Probably, people think that, if I'm going to see a psychiatric, probably if I'm going to have a coffee with you, the judgment and the label seems to be very not very crucial, but very direct. How
mm.
can one can overcome this? Because if let's say if someone is having a genuine problem of sleeping and they want to get themselves checked out, of course the loved ones are there to support and all that. But if in a corporate company, if someone know that you have visited a psychiatry, probably they label you. So how, I mean, it's still it's still a stigma right now.
Yes, yes, indeed. There's still a lot of stigma, unfortunately, especially in the Asian population, to be thought of having some mental weaknesses or conditions, right? So it is indeed a barrier for people to seek help, lah. But I see it both ways, because if you are to have the problem of insomnia, right? Very often, wherever you go to be it GP or polyclinic, you end up being referred to a psychiatrist anyway. And there's a reason why they get referred to psychiatrists, because apart from what I mentioned earlier, that there are many conditions that causes insomnia. Common causes of insomnia typically falls in the category of psychological distress, be it depression, which is very common, or anxiety, even more common, especially after COVID. And I see a lot of patients with anxiety. But having said that, it doesn't mean that if you are feeling depressed, down a little bit here and there, or feeling anxious, tense, it doesn't mean that you have a disorder, so to speak, because we are humans, right? Our mood cannot remain flat all the time. There are ups, there are downs. As long as it's not causing you too much dysfunction or distress, still living life as per normal, then it shouldn't be a disorder that you need to worry about. But rather, you take this as an opportunity to address some of these sleep symptoms that you may have. So one of the things that I always tell my colleagues actually is I'm glad that I put it as a sleep and psychiatry clinic, because then I also see sleep problems, right? And it becomes a face-saving way out for some of them who actually have mental distress, right?
Yeah.
So using it's a door opener, I see it. So I come to see you because I have sleep problems, but so happened that I also feeling a bit down, and then it helps open doors for some of these patients, and they get treatment early so that they don't end up actually getting a disorder, because early intervention often helps quite a bit. Yeah. And as for the other aspect of why seeing a psychiatrist for your sleep problem, is because actually, if you look at the brain, the areas in the brain that's responsible for the sleep and wake balance, right? The control of whether you're sleepy or you're awake, it occurs in many areas of the brain. We call it deep brain nuclei. There are various places that these are required, and the medications that we typically use, right, to treat insomnia would target some of these areas. And sleeping pills, we call it benzodiazepine, only target one of these areas, and this is the GABA receptors. And there are many others receptors in the brain. For example, the serotonin, dopamine system, there's histamine system, which is why if you take flu tablet or cold tablet for your runny nose, some people use it to get to sleep. Why? Because it's actually targeting the histamine receptors in part of the brain that is part of this whole sleep-wake cycle. And of course, the medications to target all these other centers, serotonin, dopamine, so on and so forth, very often these are actually what we call psychotropic medications, medicines that psychiatrists commonly and are comfortable in using. If you were to ask any other specialists or doctors, they may not be so comfortable, playing around or using such medications. So psychiatrists are the ones who are familiar in using such medication and know the effects and problems. Yeah.
Thank you, Doctor. Doctor, we have more questions that's coming in, and we are right now 40 minutes into the podcast. So the viewers and to Doctor as well, we are going to keep it the topic for about another 10 more minutes before we, answer another 2 more or 3 more questions for the viewers. So if you're watching these, please do press the share and like button, because we love to get a lot of awareness for this topic. And the topic is all about when sleep doesn't come. All right. And we are at Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. So please do share and like so that it can reach out to many people. I'm going to take one more question. But before that, doctor, we call the dose, all right? Dose, DOSE, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and E for endorphins. Certain of these hormones, if let's say if I want to have a reward system, I reward myself a gift, my dopamine achieves maybe a little bit, I feel good, I feel happy. If I want to feel the endorphins, I go and exercise. If I want to be loved, I'm going to hug my wife or hug my dog. Of course you don't hug strangers, but love, massage, you go and have your good food, all these things. Actually, your hormones, you feel the happy hormones do goes up. But generally, do you think, doc, is good enough, or why some people, even when they exercise or whether they do, all these things I mentioned, they don't even feel hype up? Is there a real issue, or we need to address that?
It depends on the degree where it is hyped up, right? Put it this way, if you were to be getting a high from exercising, running a lot. For example, when I was younger, I used to run 5 kilometers every day.
Right.
And the moment I stop, I get a withdrawal. I feel a bit uncomfortable, edgy. So over time, there's some adaptation. You get desensitized, and so it really depends on the degree of the changes. On and off, something happy happens. Someone show you some affection. Oh, you get a kick, you feel good, and then maybe you sleep better that night. But if every day is the same, right? Nothing have changed. Then whether or not it's good enough, that begs the question. And of course, the other thing is that sometimes if you really have an underlying issue, right, even doing things that usually help. So like, for example, in your case, endorphin release from good exercise, and whichever else, sometimes may not be enough, because the power arising from the underlying problem is just too much for you to overwhelm this difficulty. Then that is where you start to notice, this becoming a trend of sleeping well and so on.
Wow, Doctor,
Does that make sense?
The human body is such an amazing, because I think, we have different specialization on different part of the body, the brain, lungs, heart, kidney, liver, legs, orthopedics, psychiatrists, psychologists, so many stuff. The body is, I'm sure, Doc, even as we speak, the medical science is still evolving. Something new is happening. Something is, evolving all the time. It's such a amazing to know this small human body that we call life has so much of aspect into life as well. Amazing, isn't it?
Complex.
Another thing, doctor, because we talked this earlier. I know anxiety, depression can cause insomnia as well.
Yes.
Sometimes love, you have a love breakage or marriage, you got some issues and that. Some people can't sleep because that's been affecting them as well. So that can actually, make an impact on insomnia. But because they're not having sleep, other medical issues can come in as well. So earlier on I mentioned that all these uninvited guests are coming in, like heart issues, liver issues, because you're not having sleep. So much of things are happening as well. How do we know, doc, that that I need medical attention? Because that's where we are going to go in. And is it that we talked about this, that I only have difficulty sleeping, not mentally sick? We talk about that. But is there something that we can talk about in terms of when and why I should need medical attention?
Right. So important thing is to know and be aware of what is normal sleep. Right. Earlier on, I mentioned about, on average, most people sleep 6 to 9 hours. But when when you start having problems, typically what are the ones that concerns a person, right? Insomnia, actually, as you rightly put, right? If you start having problems getting to sleep, having problems staying asleep, or you start getting up way too early. That's not the end of the story, actually. The other important aspect is that you start to become dysfunctional. It affects your day after, right? You can't focus, you start making mistake, you fall asleep, you get into accidents. Dysfunction is the key thing when we know that this is becoming a problem. Now, as for that's just more in terms of the severity of the insomnia. You also need to know how extensive would it be. Well, as I mentioned earlier, most of the time when we get insomnia, it's a very acute short-term problem. Most of the time, it goes away after a few days. Sometimes it stretches to a week, 2 weeks. On and off, it comes back again. But you know it becomes a problem, and it starts affecting your daily life. It affects your relationship with others because if you don't sleep enough, you become grouchy, irritable, you snap at people, or you start become withdrawn, don't talk to people, you get moody, or you start getting into altercations, right? Now, when this dysfunction, the impact occurs, and you know that this insomnia now starts to stretch too long for its own good. When we say too long, what do we mean? Typically beyond a month, 4 weeks, or by diagnostic criteria, when we say chronic insomnia, we are talking about 3 months or longer. And interestingly, most people don't seek help for insomnia, right? Very often I get patients coming to me having suffered for at least 1 or more years of insomnia before they seek help. Yeah, so it's very common for people to, in a way, seek help late or stay away for whatever reason it may be, stigma or whatsoever. So anything that affects you beyond a period of 4 weeks or more continuously, right, or longer, and it is starting to impact your daily life, I think that's about time that you should start looking for help. And before it starts to produce other effects, be it physically or something related to mental health.
Dr. Valley said, and you put it on the table because these are signs and symptoms. People tend to always say that, burnout, I just need to go and relax myself and I come back again. No, because burnout is like a consistent thing that's happened if you're in a unhappy environment, politics and whatever issue that you may be, someone in the company, and then every day you're coming back with burden and then eventually fall into a burnout quickly. So if they don't address the issue, or if the loved ones they're not able to find these signs and symptoms, that is where the major problems are going to come in. Because if it hits you, probably then it will be too late. So quickly we have to identify ourselves. I often say this in my talks, even in my podcast, Doctor. I mean, we always need to turn inwards. We need to do a reality check. To check ourselves. Are we fine? Are we okay? Are we tired? Are we, maybe we are agitated? Maybe we take 2 days or 3 days. Are you feeling full of happiness or anger? So to release these emotions as well, at the same time to do a reality check. Dr. S.H. Wong is from the Stardust Sleep Center. His address is there, the website address www.shwongsleep.com. So if you do need to contact him, please do. Doctor, I'm going to take one more question here, and then after that we were going to end this talk show. This is not something to do with insomnia, but I think most who go for travels, UK or Eastern European and all those kind of the time zone get haywire. Then you come back, and 1 week you fall under like you're watching the ceiling and trying to count the stars outside your window. Then you fall asleep at 7 a.m. and then your whole pattern changes for 1 week. How can we tackle jet lag or to beat it?
Okay. It's a challenging question because there are some people who are just more prone to jet lag than others. There are some that jet lag never is a bother for them. So unfortunately, if you fall into the group where your body clock doesn't quite adjust quick enough, then it can be potentially quite a challenging situation. But just for common knowledge, and if you have a choice to plan the way you fly, across time zones, right? Just remember that it's going to be easier, right? It's going to be easier for you to adapt to jet lag, right? If you were to be flying westwards towards London, right? But if you were to be flying eastwards right, towards California, for example, right, it gets a bit more tricky because I put it to you this way. Is it easier for you to try and stay awake, or is it easier for you to try to get to sleep when it's not time yet?
When
It's
the time is not
easier
yet,
to,
yeah.
yeah. So it's much easier to try and stay awake, right? So westward is always easier because you just have to, stay awake, tire yourself out, and hopefully it helps at least for the first 48 hours after you arrive at the destination. Yeah, but thereafter, everyone is equal. You would still have the synchrony with the body clock or the circadian rhythm. So one way that we can try to accelerate the adjustment to the local time wherever you are traveling to is the use of melatonin supplements. That's the simplest way to do it. And apart from making adjustments to your daily activities, because where you reach the destination, as far as possible, you try to stick to the local cultural routines. So if breakfast is at what time, lunch is at what time, you try and follow as much as possible. If you intend to stay there for at least a couple of days, so that your body clock has time to adapt. By and large, our natural clock would be able to adjust itself based on the local time by 1 hour per day, 1 hour per 1 to 2 days, thereabouts, right? And it is made easier if you were to use melatonin. And melatonin, the way to use it, actually, you don't need a very high dose, right? Sometimes 0.5, 1 milligram, more than suffice. You just take it about 8 p.m. at night, because that's when the natural release of melatonin hormones from the brain commences when the sun goes down. So you try to replicate what the body normally does. So you try to trick the brain that, you are already adapted to whichever local time, that time zone that where you are situated. So that would help accelerate the changes or adaptation a little bit faster. Yeah. But after all, you still need the amount of time required.
Yeah. I mean, doctor, the last trip that I went, to Zurich, and I can't sleep there for 5 days, the first 5 days. And when I reached to Singapore, it took me almost about 6 days, sleeping time, eating time, I'm walking time, I'm supposed to do something. So everything is haywire. So to get back to the body to adjust to our time zone, indeed, it's a
Challenging,
challenge. Right.
Yes,
Thank you, doctor.
yes, yes.
Yes,
No
Dr.
problem.
Ashish Wong is from the Stardust Sleep Center. Just now I missed the P. So it's www.shwongsleeppsych.com. So you can actually look him up in his website to get to know more if you need any additional, because these are all no names mentioned here. Right, doctor. I mean, I'm just going to take the last two questions from the viewers. Then after that, we are coming to the end of the show. So we first question I'm going to take in from Audrey Chan. Is it a concern to have this rhythmic feet movement in toes while sleeping occurs in short series with few seconds in between?
Okay, it depends when does this movement occurs, because there's a slight difference. Earlier on, I mentioned about periodic limb movement disorder, right? And that happens when you're actually asleep. And most people would not notice this. But what if you are noticing all these movements in yourself, right, rather than your bed partner? Then actually we are talking about restless leg syndrome, right? There's this condition called restless leg syndrome, more common in childhood, gets better with age, and then very often when ladies get during their pregnancy, they also tend to experience this more often. So basically, you get this very uncomfortable sensation in your legs. Some call it aches, some call it twitching, some feels crawling sensation, and so on. And essentially, the person who suffers from this, you just need to keep moving your legs. You need to move around. You can't really, keep still. And the more movement you have, it feels better. And usually, this causes problems when you're trying to get to sleep. right? And there are treatment for it, and that we typically will need to screen for any underlying problems such as iron deficiency or renal diseases. Sometimes can give rise to this. So that's restless leg syndrome. But if it's something that you notice in your bed partner when they're sleeping and there's this twitching or curling or moving of the legs, and that's more likely a periodic limb movement disorder as mentioned earlier. And again, there are treatment for it. Yeah. So the key thing is that this potentially can cause very poor sleep quality. And a common complaint is that a patient would complain about still feeling unrefreshed or tired in the day, even though they thought they had slept very well the night before. Yeah. So these are some of the features.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you. Thank you for the question, Hori. I'm going to take the last one for the day, and then our topic and our podcast is going to come to the end. Thank you, doctor, for engaging with us for the past 56 minutes. And a very quick one to all the viewers. Thank you so much for those almost more than 30 over viewers who are joining us earlier on. If you're watching this, please do share and like as well so that we can spread out to all the social media friends and families and loved one who may need help, because right now it seems like a lot of people are not sleeping well or having issues which can be identified, which can be solved as well. I just read some articles just 1 or 2 days back. Our Minister of Health, Mr. Ong Ikan, has mentioned that mental health should be in the healthier SG as well. So it is becoming a priority that our mind, body, physical is a must to keep it healthy, to prevent and interventions are very important. But if we don't bother about them, but then they come and attack us, then by then it is not too late, but it can be avoided. So please do share and like so that we can reach out to many more people out there. Last question for the day, Stella Lee. Thank you for the question, Stella. How to deal with the after effects of insomnia, especially on a daily work?
How to deal with the
Yeah.
after effects, which means what? Falling asleep. I think you need a bunch of coffee if necessary. Get exercise. Get bright sunlight if you can, early in the morning preferably, because that also helps to anchor your circadian rhythm, body clock. Because otherwise, there's a tendency that you might change routines, nap more in the day, which further disrupts the sleep at night. Yeah. So trying to keep to a regular routine would help. And of course, to function at work, you do whatever means you can get. Coffee, power naps, and staying focus on a job, take more frequent breaks, and get help if you need. Yeah, that's general advice that I would recommend. Yeah.
Thank you, Doctor. And thank you, Stella Lee, for the question and for the answers, Doctor, as well. Great to see many people have started sharing it, and we have reached more than 15 overshares. Thank you. Thank you. It will reach out to more people, and you can also listen to our podcast in Spotify and Apple Podcasts. All you need to do is just type Kopi with Vans in podcast or Apple Podcasts in Spotify. You can actually listen to all these audios there. And today with me, spending almost about 1 hour, is Dr. S.H. Wong, psychiatrist and aviation medicine physician. He should be resting, but he have allocated 1 hour for Kopi with Vans and for me and for our viewers. Thank you so much, Doctor, on the topic of when sleep doesn't come. Doctor, before we end the show, any tip of the iceberg, any advice you want to give to our viewers?
Tip of the iceberg. Get good hygiene in your sleep and keep it regular.
Thank you, Doctor. It's been a great pleasure to share the in-depth of insomnia. I know what you have shared was just maybe 5 or 10%, maybe probably only 3%. There's more to it, and I know you can go for hours and hours and hours, but unfortunately the time doesn't allow us. I think this is very important, that whatever that you covered, I think this is very important for people who are going through. Definitely people who are having some kind of difficulties. Help is definitely not judged or not labeled. If your loved ones are going through any kind of symptom or sign, like what Dr. S.H. Wong has said, you can approach help, and that's perfectly fine. Thank you, doctor. Thank you so much. We're definitely going
Thank
to have
you.
to catch up for a coffee, yeah, because we haven't had a coffee. So, Kopi with Vans.
Ons.
Not beer. Unfortunately, the podcast is called Kopi with Vans. I would love to have it's off screen,
we can
but in
we
we talk
can
about.
we can have Guinness. Can pretend it's coffee. You know, it looks the same color.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you so much, and we will catch you real
Thank
soon.
you.
Doctor, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So that was Dr. S.H. Wong, great doctor, a psychiatrist, and also the aviation medicine physician, to come in on board with Kopi Events. It's my great pleasure to have him. I'm sure you have learned something. I think the very important key points today, like what Dr. S.H. Wong has said, is the sign and symptoms of your loved one that's going through. Stress can be a killer. Burnout can be a killer. Anxiety and depression, we talked about, can lead to insomnia. There's so many things. You can get insomnia first, and because of depression and anxiety, it can be vice versa. But I think we need to turn inward. Sometimes we need to check ourselves what is wrong with us. But time to time, we are not doing that. But it's time to time, it's perfectly fine to do a reality check on us. And today's topic has given us so much of in-depth of information from Dr. S.H. Wong, where he talked about the sign and symptoms and medicines and so much. In the medical science, probably you heard me saying this many a time, but we are evolving, we are learning, we are improving. The scientists are just keep on research is still keep on going in the human life, but there's so much of varieties to be looked upon. I hope you have enjoyed my show today at Kopi with Vans, and I really enjoyed it hosting the show because I learned something. I'm sure you learned as well. So do follow us. It's every Wednesday, 9 p.m. But due to certain hosting programs that I'm doing, now our Kopi with Vans has come in like every 2 weeks once instead of weekly. But you can actually listen all the podcasts. Probably it's more than 200 podcasts over the past 3 years of health podcasts. Help is there. Go and get it. It's perfectly fine. Nobody's going to judge. Nobody's going to feel stigma, right? It's your body, it's your health. You need to take charge of it. If you do need help, information is here. Go and approach it. If you need to talk to someone, go and approach it. Get a loved one who is able to help you if you're going through difficult times. Difficult times doesn't stay with you forever. They are here to just test you. But sometimes if you are not able to handle it, that's perfectly fine. We are not experts. We are all, at least we are human beings. We are. But sometimes we have this ego, we find that, hey, you know what, I'm perfectly fine until, some strategy. We need to have that. So I'll catch you again on next topic, which is upcoming, which will be advertising it in our social medias, in Instagram and Facebook, LinkedIn and YouTube. I'm going to say adios, amigos. But before that, to all the viewers who are watching and commented and asked questions, and as great thanks and appreciation to Dr. S.H. Wong for spending his 1 hour with us. Thank you. Have a lovely sleep. Have a good dreams. Enjoy yourself and be kind and be calm to yourself. This is your Vans, Kopi Vans. Adios, amigos.